Hello everyone and welcome to my oil painting class. And today we are looking how to improve our composition when painting certain subjects, like we've got a group of rocks on Gaelic Cairn. So it's an old stone circle, and how we can paint it to emphasize or its great significance, or its belonging to the landscape. So we can make our stones. Now they're looking reasonably small here. They're kind of bordering the horizon. I loved being around that area um, on the coast of let me pronounce it right, Kilhorn. Um, and I want to see what can I do with them. They're too bordering my horizon and my mountains, but they're not quite tall enough, not quite short enough to be probably kind of to make the photograph more exciting. Okay, I love the clouds, I love the views, I love the space there, but our composition can improve it even more. So what I'd like to do first, if I'll find my pen, which is right in front of me and I'm not seeing it, here it is. I can make them stones extra tall. I might just draw them a little bit more together, just as approximate group, just for sizing plan. Okay, maybe just make something like this. Okay, and then plan the landscape around it. So maybe then I can find my horizon line, maybe look at some of the shapes of the mountains, distant mountains. So now my stones, my cairn is already taller than that line of horizon. So it's on the hill. It was on the hill, but it looks quite plain. I think that's how the green fields just sloping down gently. We're not on the top of the mountain, but we're on quite a significantly raised surface. So I might kind of emphasize that hill, how it builds up, where it stands, and then I can perhaps look at those lovely exciting clouds here. Okay, so that will give me emphasis on monumentality and the presence of the stone, the kind of storytelling of the past, of the 6,000 years ago, when the people were uh, praying to the sun, or whatever those stone circles were made for the burials. They're a significant part of their life. Or we can look at the stones and think of they've been here for so long. Almost that landscape is no longer exist without them. Okay, might just put a bit of a cloud here, a bit more. So maybe I can move them deliberately lower than horizon line, and they're almost being part of that shape. So it doesn't mean that it's one composition is better than the other. It's just what type of message we want to create. Okay, so maybe that will be I'm shortening the space well, for the grass. Maybe I'm kind of moving the stone, the cairn here a bit lower, so they are the landscape. They no longer anything separate from it. They integrated. Yeah, it's like the clouds and parts of them. The loch there at the back. So I might just put that horizon line tiny bit more higher deliberately. So that horizon line could have been lowered, or it is reasonably lower, yeah, in comparison to the height of the painting. On this one could be just slightly higher, and I might increase that size of the mountain here. Okay, maybe so that becomes, so almost we're looking down from the height of the hill, and we're seeing the opening of the loch here. Okay. Maybe a little bit part of the village even here. So it becomes that it's absorbed in that space. Okay. And the clouds here as well still coming up. Okay. Something there. And I can also play perhaps maybe with the grasses. We've got a little bit of a shrub here. So that might be, I might quite like the cluster of the stones on the right hand side. So I think might be the shrub, or might be smaller size of it, or maybe I turn it to more of a shadow. I don't know if I want anything quite in that corner, just not to totally lose it to the landscape. I want it to be there, but not still totally lose it. Okay. So both options will be really good. Now we can emphasize the size even bigger, or we can integrate the stones even more. For example, that shrub could be moved and we can put it elsewhere. It might be almost a backdrop for the stone circle, or the stones could be extra taller. And I think both, as I said, ideas could be really, really exciting. Quite like the rain here as well coming through. So maybe that could be connecting with our stone circle, how the rain comes in. Yeah, or maybe the opposite, that's when it's opening up and the rain is somewhere quite less significant. Yeah, maybe something in there is kind of on the backdrop of those rocks, things are happening there. I'm thinking of going for the first design. Because I think I can make the stones not huge, it's bigger than they're on the photograph, but still making them more present. I'd love to do this design as well at some point. Maybe incorporate that with the rain and work maybe more with the principles of it. I'm thinking the more I've kind of been sketching it, thinking if it would have been more panoramic view, then the rocks will be even better part of that landscape. When here they're that monument, so I think maybe I'll go with that vision, with that idea. Right, so it's up to you. If you decide to go for one or the other, that will be absolutely fine. So if you've got any particular preferences, will be wonderful to see how the work develops. Right, so I'm going to start now with my sketch. And as I planned my Cairn first, so Cairn stands for the monument, the burial site. It could often apply to, if you're going up to the mountains and you see a pile of stones one on top of another, that could be a cairn as well. So all sorts of things. So it could be a marker, a group of stones together for different reasons placed together. Right, on my palette, before I get to my background, let me talk you through my colors I have on my palette. I've got some white, buff titanium, if you have it, and also if you have blue-gray. It just gives me a good opaque color perhaps for my clouds, already pre-mixed with loads of white, so I could go directly use those colors. But we can also mix them ourselves. Ochre, cadmium red or cadmium orange, some violet, ultramarine. I'll just put a little bit of color so you can see here. Cobalt blue or cerulean or both. I only wanted one, but ended up squeezing both. Okay, cerulean got more white in it in comparison to cobalt blue. Emerald green, or Viridian or Fellow Blue, sorry, Fellow Green, any of those looking Viridian-like. This is my olive green, a yellowish type of green. Again, could be different titles for it, different names and different paints. And a bit of Payne's gray or any other black. We only need a little bit just to get some of them, maybe some indigos, maybe mix it with a bit of red for later. So any black will be fine. Right, so I'm going to start sketching with my violet color. I'm going to make it runny with using the tips. Now, the reason I picked up an orange background, quite a bold color, is because we have quite a lot of green, and green sits really, really well on orange. And also the volume of our clouds could give me a lovely warmth so that I can directly paint with some coolness when I work on the clouds. So that warmth will be already present within my orange. So try to look for opportunities where you can have looser layers of paint and maybe leave in small amounts of color here and there. I also have a little bit of orange board just for my colors trials. Sometimes it's just nice to see what the color looks like before we put it on our board. It will behave differently than on a white palette. Right, so if I were to go for my first composition, I'm going to plan the shape of all of the cairn. So I'm going to plan the left and right side of it. Okay, this is going to be a taller rock. That's not a smaller one. How much space we want left at the front, and how much space we want to keep for the sky. So it's not huge. We could have made it much bigger. That could be another extra monumental view of it. So I'm just slightly increasing it in comparison to the photograph. So that's my approximate dimensions. Before I do any other designs of it and start looking into details of it, I want to have my landscape behind it. I want to have that placement identified. So my horizon line, so this is halfway through my board, we said we're going to drop it a little extra for that monumental look. Okay. And maybe the actual water for the loch is going to be a bit lower. That's how it's coming in into the land. So it will look even lower perhaps because of the water level, but that's might be my horizon. Okay. And let's approximately find the mountains. I'm going to stay to the smaller size of them. Yeah. So again, it's just thinking what sizes of elements, how they will influence our painting in the future, what type of message they will be giving us. So I can't make these mountains too big, as they will start competing with the importance of my stone circle here. Okay, maybe something here. Let's see, might see more behind this stone. Okay, something tiny bit maybe. This side, just need to double check if it's a similar height. Yes, so that's a bit more of this line. Okay. Well, let's have a look at the clouds approximately. I love this big white, well, this highlight on this cloud gives us a really good understanding of its shape with its light and middle tones and the shadow. That's quite a nice one. One of the other ones we can see quite a lot of shadows. Now, what did I do with my shadow here? Just almost maybe drop this one tiny bit more lower. Maybe. So that's when I can tweak or the clouds brought lower or the stones going tiny bit more higher up. Quite like that they're tiny bit more on them, kind of overlapping. So the stones and clouds almost bordering, but not quite. Okay. And the blue opening here. And there's a big shadow on this cloud which drops down and again comes up. And the base of that cloud, that's what that line was. And perhaps the rain starts from the base of it, but I think if I were to bring another lower cloud, maybe rows of them there, but then the rain will be coming just from the lower parts of it. I think that might be better rather than taking all of that space. That reminded me of that design rather than kind of that lower space as a segment of that environment. Okay, and then they will have some lower clouds. Maybe this cloud will extend go lower still. So good planning, good almost a discussion within yourself through your sketches, through your talking through size of elements. Okay, will tell us that story, will give us that emphasis on what we're trying to achieve. Okay, something here in that cloud, I can just see it's a little bit more definition, how it's meets with another layer. Right, so that gives me an opportunity to see, is that significant enough in comparison to the sky? I think it is. It's not huge, but it is significant enough. Deliberately don't want to be making it overly huge. Right. Now let's have a look at the shapes of the stones now. So now I've got an overall group, but let's now separate them a bit more. So I've got a smaller one here on the side. Maybe let's give it a little gap between the whole group together. This one is actually leading the other way. Okay. And let's break it down a little bit more. How it's been carved out from original stones. Sorry, as we were setting up and getting the paints out, I was asking if anybody knew anything about stone circles and ancient burials like these and in Wales. And I just remembered watching a documentary on Stonehenge and some of its blue stones. I think I've forgotten which row of stones they were, but they actually came from South Wales. They actually stayed there for so long and then been moved to where they are now at Stonehenge down south. So apologies, my memory weren't as great as I was setting up about Wales. Right, so let's have a look And yeah, the program was fascinating, how they were carrying them, how they were trying to establish the position of them, where they were carved from. They were trying to match the date by light, since last time when they've been seeing the light, seeing the stones. That was fabulous as well. Right, so I'm just finding the shapes of my stone circle, and I'm looking for what's a little bit lighter, what's a little bit darker. So this circle, so this stone is at the back. It's mainly in the shadow, so I'm painting it all together as a tone. This one we can see the side of it, so I might just do a little plan for myself, so I'm still seeing it as a block. Okay, I think this one ended up a little bit too narrow, but it's okay. I'm not an archaeologist, but I can tweak it a little bit. Okay, I'm not recording the exact perfection of them, but I'm creating a character of my stones. So that's permitted as well for all of us. But I quite like the idea of maybe giving a little slant. So they are simple shapes, but if you can try to create a unique silhouettes for them, so that storytelling, that monumentality of them will be through those diagonals, through those shapes, through those silhouettes, through that marvelous and exciting, fascinating piece of history. Right, so I think this group is a little bit further apart. I might just give them a little more space. Might not be as much space as I wanted, but then the actual group is spreading out a little bit more. I'm again making mine slightly taller, slightly grouped up together, a bit more unified together. So that's another darker tone for the stone further back. And this one a little bit more close to us. Okay. And there might be some more little steps to the side of it. Right, just double checking what's happening here. Maybe this one coming out a little more. Okay. So things been moved about. The local farmers changed them over, not recently, but centuries and thousands of years ago. But how they've been preserved for so long, it's mind-blowing. How much they're part of our history here. Right, I'm happy with that. Might just put a tiny bit of darkness for this side as well. Just again, planning straight away for possible shadows, for possible subtones and kind of volume of light and dark. So I'm almost creating a light coming from somewhere here. The reason I'm finding where that light is coming from is by looking at that cloud. We've got a bit of light here, yeah, kind of from the top. So we're creating this shadow. The rest of the environment looks quite overcast, so it's harder to find stronger shadows and stronger lights. There's a little hints on some of the right-hand side, the tops, where it might be there. So for me, testing it out, almost painting it tonally here, hopefully will be easier to kind of vary the colors. Also, there are lots of lichens, mosses growing around over the stones. I might leave it out, so it's not going to take too much details. I want to see the flats. I want to see those surfaces as as kind of sheer flats, sheer spaces, rather than a lot of texture and details there. Just for the for that monumentality, the simplification of the surface, almost cleaning them up a bit more. Right, so what I'm gonna also do for the foreground is a little hint of the slant of the hill that it's all stands on, all of this stands on. Okay, and this shrub and extra grasses, I might just turn it more into a shadow, almost as, again, it's on the top of the hill and it just partially starts dropping down. So I'm creating a pedestal for it, yeah? When the mountain's at the distance, maybe even just drop this mountain lower. Might turn it to more pointy shape somewhere here. Maybe even drop it lower. And this might not be here, so it's not not getting overly busy with what's at the back. Right, I'm happy with keeping some lower mountains there. That was my range, so that might be some extra clouds layers. Okay, so maybe the rain will be coming somewhere here. Maybe even a little bit. Yeah, so again, a little bit of planning. Is it going to be too much of that rain? Or is that going to be, yeah, that rhythm, looking at maybe a larger shape of that rain descending, maybe a small one, maybe just a little glimpses of that direction. Okay, good. And anything, if we wanted to do for the little village, I will only keep it as a tiny bit of maybe darker marks, maybe a little bit of dabs of light and dark. We see a bit of a tree or group of trees. Again, that might be lovely little dabs of darkness here and there to show the scale of the landscape and then how far shapes are. Maybe there will be another tree. It gives us the space a bit more. If I'll make that tree slightly bigger, it immediately will make it closer to us, and the scale will be changing as well. I'll see if I'll place another tree here. I can see one in the photograph, but I don't think I've got much space for it, so I might leave it out and have that cluster of small groups of trees just in one area. Right, so this is my thinking process. This is my planning. So I'm happy with my design and ready to get my colors out. So now let's evaluate our tones first. If I were to look at the whole picture, what's going to be my lightest tones? So the sky will be the most light. Yes, there will be subtones of darkness from the blue and the shadows of the clouds. So if we were to separate just the sky and look at light, so the highlights in the clouds will have the most white. Yeah, maybe some of the sky will be medium darkness within that shape of light, and then that big shadow, maybe that one, some of those bits of rain, maybe even part of the distant mountain almost looks a similar color. Yeah, so that will be all light. The rest looks very much similar tone. The extra darker shapes will be just around the houses. I think there's a wall there, or maybe groups of trees, individual trees. I've got the shrub, which I'm going to turn to a shadow perhaps, so that's going to be slightly darker there as well. And some of the shadows around the Cairn, some of the backs of the stones, and maybe some of the base of them there as well. So in a way, I have already done the darks by using my violet sketching blocking color, except the shadow in here. Okay. So let's start with the sky. Let's work with a little bit more lighter tone because orange is our medium darkness. We already got some darks from the shadows. Yeah, let's paint a bit more of the light. I'm going to use direct oil on my lighter, on my highlights of my clouds. First, as I'd like to apply some softer paint, some more transparent paint to the light. I would like to use a bit of a softer transparent layer for my clouds shadow as well, but what I will do, if I can have a little separation for them, so I'm just going to remember approximate placement of my highlights, approximate placement of my shadows, but it's all going to be oily, runny. I'm going to keep the sky blue part as it is. I'm going to keep it dry, that surface dry. So maybe that's one here. For the lower part of the sky, where the clouds we see more as smaller lines, maybe I'll just leave it out for the moment, okay? And with my larger brush, I'm going to start introducing some color. That's where the buff titanium and blue-gray will come very handy. So if I were to pick up some, I've got some oil on my brush already. I just did a little bit more. I'm going to go directly for buff titanium. And I'm going to paint my highlights of the clouds with it in such a way I can see my orange background. So the paint dilutes even more once I place it on the board because that volume of lovely oil we introduced already. If things start to run, that's not a problem. The opposite, sometimes it's quite a extra bonus. Okay. And this is our playful application of warm light before we do anything else to it. Sometimes the paint almost shrinks back or kind of goes back. So when I applied buff titanium to this area, it's looked more blockier, and now it's almost partially separated within the oil, within the runny plain oil as liquid, and it just shows more of the orange background. So that's when I might touch it up a little bit more. Okay. I can see a little bit more of a similar light, kind of a bit more central area under that heavy shadow of the cloud, and maybe a little bit more here. It might give me a bit of extra light around my Cairn. So if I were to place it here, partially diluted, this area is dry for me, but it might give me, my paint is reasonably still damp. So this is less textured, but it's could be encouraged later. But, excuse me. But, And maybe a little extra light somewhere here as well. Tiny bit of maybe light coming in. Not too sure if I like this diagonal or that straightish line, so perhaps that will be something I can consider tweaking when I'll work in the shadows. Maybe drop all of that line lower. If I use my cloth, I can partially wipe it. So as I'm not copying my photograph, as I'm making my new shapes and developing the work, these type of amendments we have to consider, we have to work with. We're not going to know if they're looking right to actually place it there. Okay, that's looking quite exciting. Quite like this runniness. Almost gives me that idea of that rain as well. Right, bit of light in there. Let's put a little bit of shadows. So I'm going to wipe my brush. I don't need to clean it anymore, just wiping will be enough. And I'm gonna use a little bit more of my oil again as my brush is drying out, bristles are dry. I'm gonna go for blue-gray. Now, if you don't have blue-gray, I should have said it earlier, sorry, if you don't have buff titanium, you can use white, ochre, and small amount of violet to make your own buff titanium. If you don't have blue-gray, you can use a small amount of ultramarine and Payne's gray with quite a lot of white. And again, this is just a pre-mixed paint of those ingredients. Okay. And so we can go directly with the color. It's going to be paler than my wanted shadows. I'll just place it here. It will start appearing paler than my orange. So I can perhaps apply a little bit of it and then make my extra shadows darker. So I might just put some of this blue-gray on the borders of my light. Okay, so that's how we'll know this is going to be a shadow and this is going to remain a light. Quite exciting blue. Could have been a lovely blue for the sky, but by the time we put a fresh blue for the sky, that will stand out even better. Okay, maybe a tiny bit more of it somewhere here. Bordering. Okay, anywhere lower horizon. I think bordering some of my mountains. The paint behaves totally different. Now I'm painting on a dry surface. Okay, in comparison to that runny surface, so it's a really good experience of testing it and seeing the way the paint behaves. So again, I'm just planning some of that blocking, some of the approximate placements of the color. I'm planning and preparing the area for when I'm ready to paint the rain. So far I'm just smudging the whole of that rain storm. Okay, and that's giving me a bit more of a shape of my mountains if I still want them to be present there. Okay. Anything else of that paler blue, low areas of my heavier cloud? Okay, and let's put a little bit more darker tone. So our blue-gray is slightly darker than our buff titanium. Yeah, we can see that, especially here. We can see that border and separation of darkness. But let's make our blue-gray slightly darker. So I'm picking up more paint, and I'm going to add a hint of ultramarine and a hint of blue-gray, sorry, Payne's gray, or any of your black to that. Okay, I want to see more blue in the color than black, if possible. So let's put a stroke to see what it looks like. Okay, and also perhaps then it looks quite blue. Another orange background kind of calms it down, brings it a bit more, neutralizes it to a bit more of a grayish tones. But if I were to put a hint of violet to it as well, and a tiny, tiny hint of ochre, it just will make it more grayish, more not just blue. I don't want the blue fighting with a fresh blue sky. That's tiny, tiny bit more duller. Okay, more of a purpley as well color. Okay, so now I'm going to use that mix to block the rest of the sky for the orange. Sorry, block the rest of the orange for the rest of the clouds shadows. Very runny. I want things to be simplified first. Look how some of these ones coming through excitingly. But unfortunately, they might have too much details there for me. But just smudging them and seeing what happens on the surface is lovely. Now I'm considering dropping the size of this stone. I think I might turn it a little smaller. I think that silhouette might look better. Can still bring my light back, but I think the shape will stand out better. And maybe this one just need to have a little more of a slant as well. So I'm painting the sky and I'm thinking of my stone circle as the sky frames it so well. Now I just blocked the shadow. I'm not overly happy with how it's integrating with the light yet, so it's just a little bit of placing of the colors. Now I can use my cloth now to rub some of the color in, bring some of the orange back. If you bring too much background forward, you can just apply a bit more paint. Okay, or just use your brush as well. The brush will be a little bit softer and might not lift as much color. But using the cloth at this stage, because my surface is definitely quite runny, it allows me to gain some of the orange back, but not in that bold way, in a bit more subtle way. Okay, and I also can see where my extra shadow darkness could have been, which are a little bit lost here, perhaps. I'm not too worried about losing part of the shape of this distinctive cloud. We haven't painted much fresh white on there yet, so that's all pretty good. We need a tiny bit more darkness. Again, let's come back to pure pigments of blue, violet, Payne's gray, minuscule amount of ochre. My ochre is quite powerful here, so just be extra gentle with it. I need extra darker tone where I have quite a lot of oil and the darkness is disappearing, so I can just increase it small amount. It's almost blends, almost like in watercolor. Works into its surface. Quite like that shadow darkness somewhere here. Okay, and that contrast between those beautiful oranges and the smudges of the color becoming more intriguing, more storytelling. That contrast is increasing in darkness as well. Okay, maybe my mountains. Remember we said our mountains and the distance the other side of the loch could go slightly similar if I go for a tiny bit more of the indigo, or sorry, ultramarine. That might be my hints of mountains somewhere there. And that mountain's got a little bit more greens in it, so maybe I'll keep it blank for now. Maybe a little connection in color, but then I'll paint it slightly differently. Okay. Any more of that darker tone we can put on the clouds while it's runny. Maybe a stroke, maybe a little dab. If it's too much, you can always rub it out and remove it. A little turn, a little gather of that momentum of darkness within the clouds. Okay. Anything else going from horizontal shapes of distant clouds, shadows. Might just do something a bit more similar, maybe not as much. Might have some more fluffy whites showing, but that's just creates that space as well. While we have soft linear development, and while we've got the colors. So the sky looks quite dark at the moment. We've got that lovely depth to it. We've got a bit of a sun set within the color from the orange. Getting quite exciting. Okay. I've just cleaned my brush. I'm gonna load it with some fresh oil now. And this time I need some fresh white. I want to paint my blue part of the sky. Okay, we've done our clouds. Let's do the actual sky. So I'll use, I'm looking for that left top corner. I'm gonna go for some cerulean with my white. And I think that will be dark enough, just going for cerulean. Could have gone for cobalt blue if you don't have cerulean, but you might need much more white. Okay, and this time it's much thicker paint. I want our runny paint continue settling into those runny layers, some of the layers preserving the shape, some of them continuing to run. I want that still to happen, so giving it a moment longer to continue that process. That viscosity of the paint is doing the job over time. Right, so I'm gonna go for slightly darker cerulean at the top of my sky. I think it just lacks a little more of the white. It's less opaque that I wanted, so let's make it more opaque. More white, it means that I need to add more cerulean, but that proportion of white is more significant, so it's not going to show through as much of my orange. Doesn't mean that it not going to show. It's but it blocks the surface slightly better. Maybe a tiny bit more fresh, a stronger cerulean close to my cloud. Okay, just establishing a bit more of the variety. And I'm gonna go with extra white, slightly paler, quite thick paint. For lower layers, and it's we'll start meeting that runny paint and create a barrier almost. This pale white area I'm just created, it could be other clouds further away, almost like a foggy, misty, hazy environment behind my bigger clouds close to us. Yeah, that's quite nice. Now, if we want to use any of this paler blue cerulean elsewhere, maybe there isn't much on the photograph, but I think I'm going to try to place perhaps one somewhere here. If it's higher up, I might need a bit more darker cerulean, maybe here. Then I'll see how if it will remain there or if it will be smudged and disappear, but I might just give myself an opportunity where it could be. And perhaps some paler blue, almost like a clean sky, clear sky, away from clouds, might be just squeezing in somewhere. I need to for the paint to remain where I want it with a stroke. Because my surface is so oily, I need to have quite thick paint. If it's runny, it will continue smudging. If I want to place it there and remain that color, I need to have much thicker stroke. Okay, maybe just a little hint of it will be enough. Did quite like that darker shadow still there. Okay. Good. Maybe a tiny bit more clear space if we're gonna have some rain. Might be just a small amount of clear sky in the distance. So then the rain streaks will come almost in between them. Yeah, between some of that light. Okay. Maybe somewhere there for now. Right. And I'm going to wipe my brush again. So there will be very little oil left. I don't mind it's remaining partially blue, but it's the moisture I want to get rid of. And I want to bring direct, fresh white, and just as a dry paint to my highlights of my clouds, where I can rub that paint in and almost move that buff titanium and other colors we had in place about. Okay, so I'm kind of clearing some space for it by placing it, kind of rubbing it in that environment. It gives me some lovely platforms of light. Yeah. If I just put a stroke, it's less likely to remain where I want it to be. But if I give it a little rub, I'll almost like settle it in there. Okay. And I keep topping up my fresh white. Yeah, we've got a big chunk here stuck in there. That will be quite nice. So let's see for this area. Just rub that in. So the colors start mixing on my painting. Okay, this is a little bit less integrated shape, but that's a good start. Yeah, I can start bringing that white a bit more lower or higher, or bring my cloth and help myself a little bit more, lifting and shifting things a bit more within that surface as well. Okay, not too sure about that. Maybe still helping myself with other tools like a finger. Okay. Also, moving, kind of rotating your brush from one side to another, it might give you an opportunity to see how much thicker or diluted paint you have on your brush. So I'd like a little bit of the darkness here, what was left from my background layer of sketching color, of diluted paint, something happening here quite excitingly. That three-dimensional cloud has started to emerge. Maybe a little more fresh white stroke here. Yeah, so that thick paint in combination of thinner layers, giving us that exciting volume. Maybe a bit of light right under the shadow somewhere here. Very playful light. Okay, maybe dragging it a bit more further in if it will happen for me. Okay. Now, if I want to preserve some of the runniness, I quite like smaller runny shapes, but maybe super long ones, I can just smudge them into existing color here, but this one's quite nice. Maybe some of these will go, maybe partially will go. Quite like these ones, but there's three similar quality. Okay, so maybe something like this. Okay. Any more of that fresh white? Maybe a little hint will start appearing here. Maybe a little more. The large area is going to be opening up this side. Again, can I just play with my brush? Because the surface is so oily, I can press on the bristles widely, and I've just done a very big, yeah, playful mark, and that might be an exciting silhouette. The more I slow down, the less, not successful, but spontaneous it becomes. The more you kind of turn your brush and play with it a bit more, yeah, it becomes subconscious work for our strokes better. I might just do something here, maybe a little extra build to compensate for that less spontaneous mark. But the sky becoming now wonderfully fluffy, yeah, full of fluffy clouds. I just integrate that in between darkness here as well. Lovely and playful. Let's see if a hint of paler tone here will come in. Playing and exploring is important. Worst case scenario, things didn't happen, you've done maybe overdone it, wipe the whole lot off or part of it and give it another go. That's part of the excitement of painting with oils. So I've got some sharper edges, especially on the border with light and dark, and I have loads of soft edges, and that's what I'm aiming for. That wonderful range of light and dark, range of color, soft and sharp borders. Okay. Now, if we wanted a little bit more clouds on the lower level for highlights for the clouds, we already done the shadows. Might be small quantities. I'm actually, the more I'm looking at the painting, I'm quite happy with my distant clouds. I might just test a couple maybe somewhere here. I don't want to overdo it. I quite like the idea that the roof of the world, the clouds, are staying above, not maybe broken down. It becomes that roof of above my Stonehenge. Yeah, it's almost like that protective environment. But I'm gonna test a little bit of light. Down maybe here on the distance where there's a bit more calmer space. I think the highlights from buff titanium are probably enough. Yeah, maybe I'll just leave it as it is. Again, I can come back to it if once I've painted the greens and the stones and feels we can do with some extra light and the distance. Maybe I'll change, kind of add work into that after, but I think I'm happy with remaining with current volume of white on the sky. Right, I've just put a quick recording of what my blues were against the orange background. Yeah, a bit more thick buff titanium diluted one. Blue-gray solid, bit more diluted ones. My cerulean was white, my shadow of the cloud, and how the fresh white behaves next to it. So if you wanted to do an exercise like that first, which I meant to do and I just got carried away with my clouds, that's a really lovely way of exploring the colors. Next, I'd like to paint our stones using similar colors we've done for the sky, but I'd like to have a little bit more emphasis perhaps on violet. So I'm using the same colors. I'm going to start with buff titanium. Now, the stones are going to be darker than my sky. Looking at the shadows of the clouds, in some areas there might be, the stone might be slightly lighter, and might be as dark as and much darker than the shadows. So the darkest cloud shadows could be similar darkness than my stone. So I can start with, for example, buff titanium as my base color. So instead of white, I already got opaque color from buff titanium. Okay, if you have it. And I'm going to add a little bit of violet to it. Okay, that still looks quite warm and it's still quite light. Okay, I'm just going to get a tiny bit more paint, so I'm not going to run out too quickly. A bit more both. Next, I'm going to go for a small amount of ultramarine. So that will cool that warmth from both titanium and violet, becomes more of a grayish version. And I'm going to remain with a bit more of that violet. Okay, again, not too light. If it's still not light enough for us, another option is to try a small amount of cadmium orange. So again, it becomes warm, and a small amount, a bit more of that of ultramarine. That will give us a slightly different type of violet, but still is within that. It's slightly darker. I'm just trying to mix the color without the black first before I start going for some black. All right, and let's apply it on one of our stones and see what it looks like. Okay, so that's quite a good color maybe for some of the highlights, but might not be dark enough for the shadows. So perhaps for some of the highlights, we see a little light on the corner of this stone. Might just apply it a bit bigger than we need. Maybe where I left paler orange colors on the rocks. That's where some of the highlights are going to be. Maybe this block, I'll see maybe the top of it. Just don't want it to clash with the sky, but for now I think that's okay. Now, because I'm painting on a dry surface, paint applies much more flatly. Yeah, there isn't much of that volume yet, so it gives us a good definition of carved rock. Yeah, there's blockiness of that stone, that more of an even surface. At some point there was a more of an even surface. Okay, I'm gonna persevere. Let me put that color here as well, just to see what it looks like in comparison to the rest of my um, earlier colors. Let's persevere with a little bit more violet. And maybe if buff titanium is not strong enough to make a darker color, so it's not too white, too light to make a darker color, maybe I'll go for ochre and again a small amount of cadmium red or cadmium orange, whichever you have. Again, tiny bit more of that violet. So small amounts at a time gives me an opportunity to observe what happens to the color and how dark it's getting. I think that's better now. Also, it comes close to some of those violet strokes we were painting with, we were sketching with. Okay, so let's give that one a go. That's quite nice. It's kind of grayish violet. Yeah, and it gives me immediately a subtone, gives me that three-dimensional feel for that block of stone. Yeah. Okay, I almost subdivided into another surface, which I just made up. I can't see how it's for this particular rock, what's happening there light-wise. Can see a little bit more for this tall one, but not for the others. But that might be a playful way of making more definition. Okay, that's a lovely violet. Maybe I'll just increase that violet even more here in depth. That's will almost emphasize the thickness, how chunky the stone is, how heavy it is. Yeah, look at that volume immediately. Almost got a belly. Maybe that highlight might be too not in the right place. I'll get rid of that. Okay. This stone has a little ledge in the middle. It's almost like if you imagine a Magnum ice cream and it's sideways turned towards you. So we see a flat surface on one, we can't see the other side, flat surface, and this one got that thickness, but it's not a perfect, lovely round like an ice cream, but it has got similar thickness to it, but it's got a little bit more of a dent. Yes, slightly chopped. And again, it's been within the time chopped, put down a bit of ultramarine for extra darkness, or it's been deliberately cut to create a shape. Okay, or maybe just under this angle of light, it gives us that extra depth. That's quite nice. So now a small amount of ultramarine works because the volume of violet I have is quite strong. Okay, and this stone might have a little more extra depth in this corner. Maybe too much, we'll see. Maybe I'll take some of that off. Ooh, look at that. Look at that clean orange coming through, that glow. That's exciting. Right. And then any other darks, just to block my remaining stone. I'm keeping the shadows, the stones in the shadows till the last. So I can emphasize the darkness and also play on some silhouettes. Now here my mountain and my stone clashes, so I might have to pick up a lighter color for the ridge here to separate them a bit more. I think my brush is a bit too mucky for it, but if I'll leave it as a reminder, I can come back and have a little tweak on that after. Right, I can see a slightly paler corner for this side as well, perhaps. Maybe that's too pale. Let's keep this rock a little bit more flatter. So I need to have a flatter color. I know I can always wipe the paint and get that beautiful glow of the orange, but I want to see overall shape slightly flatter. Maybe get this highlight lower. So I'm just playing with the shape and seeing what's going to work on it. Okay, I've got slightly more simplified form for it. Good. Okay, that comes out a little bit too bold. Let's tone it down. Okay. So within that range of violet, ochre, buff titanium, a bit of blue, I'm finding the range of colors and I'm finding the range of light and dark. Okay, so they're becoming much more three-dimensional now. Okay, I think that darkness was a bit better. Not too much, but okay, good. That's quite exciting. And now I'm ready for my shadows, but I'm going to bring a smaller brush for it. If you can have more of a pointy brush, it doesn't have to be round, but flat brush which will give you more of a defined line will be better. I'll use a small amount of my current color. Right, I think that's maybe too much oil. A little bit taken off my brush on my tissue. And I'm gonna go for direct violet. So there's a tiny bit of buff titanium for that opaque quality of the paint. I'm gonna go direct, more solid cadmium red. Okay, that gives me a beautiful darkness. A little bit more of that violet. Cadmium red kills that vibrancy of perfect purpley, yeah, that more of a fluorescent violet becomes much more natural, deep, soil-like darkness. Let me just put it in here as well, almost like black on its own. If I were to have it diluted or paler version, yeah, it's got quite a lot of resemblance of the original violet, but that red stands out even better. Right, and let's apply some big shapes of darkness for the stones behind. I can finally make a decision right on my larger rock shape. Maybe I will create that little step separately. So help yourself with a light brush and a dark brush, yeah? So both could be the instruments of how the form will end up. Sometimes it's harder to paint a thin line, so painting a wider one and then come in with a different color. Can shrink a wide line. Right, I'm going for small amount of ultramarine as well now. That gives me extra depth. Okay. And I'm going to continue that shadow here. And I wanted to trim this side a little more as well. Okay, almost quite a solid darkness. If it starts to appear more solid, I might just take some of that paint off. Look at that glow in that corner immediately. Could have done with a sponge. Oh, sponge as well. Might be a bit too big for sponge. Too small area. Sponge might be too big for it. Cloth, brush, anything, finger. Okay, just giving it a little more less solid, a little bit more air within that surface. I wanted some, I quite like these ones now, but maybe a bit more definition of darkness here. More suggestive what's happening to the form here. And also I'm going to use this darkness at the base of the stones, creating broken edges, shadows, more weathered corners. Maybe the sheep and cows would come round and rub themselves against those rocks, and there will be all sorts of, maybe the footprints and things will be giving some softening some of the soil away as well. So I'm just painting a little bit more of the darkness around. So there is more definition with those shadows for the whole stone circle, but it doesn't mean that we're quite finished with it. By the time we put grasses and overlap those shadows, it will be much more sitting in the environment as well. Right, I might paint a little bit of the on top of my shadow, a little ledge, so we see the surface there, so it's becoming more three-dimensional, that stone, not just a flat darkness. Okay, maybe somewhere there. Okay, that's a bit of a border. Okay. Anything here? Suggestive is good. Don't have to make perfect things, but there are more sharper borders on these stones than, for example, what we had on the sky. Could do with a tiny bit more sharper light. Bringing tiny bit more buff titanium with my cleaner brush. For this ridge, I just wanted to stand out against the sky. So maybe my sky will need to have all those darker clouds. I think by the time I'll do the rainstorm smudges, I think that will be more defined. That's better as well. That's a bigger, flatter shape. That's giving more texture to the more life. Good, maybe that shape will have a tiny bit of light as well. Just almost creating a little labyrinth of what's happening to the rocks, how they're standing out against each other, what happens to the light. Okay, maybe just stop there without overworking it. Okay. And I'm going to have a look at the sky around those rocks. I might just use one of my smaller brushes as well, just to clean it first. Just tiny bit more. Now I can see, for example, here I could have tiny bit more of a paler blue, something like this. Yeah, maybe some of this paler blue could come up on the top as well. Just for personal work, you might have different borders for your rocks. See what will emphasize their significance there. I'm gonna go for fresh white, and I had a pale cerulean. I'm gonna stay with thick paint, remembering that surface is very runny. And if I go pale in color, it's quite a lot of darkness in the sky. My color will get muddy, so if I go a little bit extra lighter, I will hopefully end up with a tone I want. Okay. Just almost placing. Okay, that's shape. Doesn't need to be there. Okay, that definition a bit more clearer now. And maybe a tiny bit more fresher color on this side as well. Okay, still quite dull corn. I think maybe my golden light might peep through there as well. So I'll carry on with my blues on this side. Okay. And that's fresh buff titanium and white. I think buff titanium and so might be as well. No, I used it fresh one, but there's so much paint. Tiny bit of white will keep it a bit more together. That's better. It actually gives me an extra focal point for the rocks by placing smaller marks and more playful light. I'm almost like putting details on the light, emphasizing that focus through the stones. I think I can do a tiny bit of that light here as well. Don't want it to be stripy, so let's just vary the volume of that yellowish color. Okay, that's better. Good. Just a little more plain shape rather than broken shape. Right, and I think I'm also ready for that drizzle, creating that rain. Now to do that, we need a rough brush. I'm just checking my different brushes. The one which will split the most will be the most effective one. I've got another one I have in mind. Let's just try this one. So if I'll just kind of keep it dry and have that rough edge to it, just split the bristles a bit more. I'm just going to drag it across. Possibly a good idea just to practice it on a piece of paper as well. Piece of board, piece of paper. So all I'm going to do, I'm going to start from my top cloud and I'm just going to drag the color through. I'm going to turn my brush sideways, so I've got a width, kind of a wider stroke. Then I could have a narrow one, yeah. So it might just drag one color more than the other. Okay, maybe another little streak. So it doesn't appear all massive smudge. That might be just enough of that rain coming through. And I think I might do a smaller smudge somewhere here. If it's not showing, I might need some of the darker color, almost in that little small, don't want it all the way down from a big cloud. I want it from a smaller cloud here. So almost place a darker color. I'm gonna wipe the brush again. And then this color could then smudge over the area. So it's a little hint, maybe less significant than here, but it's showing that rain coming through. Okay, that's not looking a bit too similar in size. That's a bit better. That's better. That little rain. Maybe, you know what? I might just even bring it over my mountain here. That's quite nice. And that looks like this mountain is going over. That light is going over that ridge as well. Really happy with that. Right, now we just have to do our greens. Let's work with them quite quickly as well. I'm going to start with some oil. Doesn't matter if I've taken the thick paint off my brush, but it still has a bit of gray in it. But that's okay. It's going to be lost within my greens very, very shortly. I'm going to start with some white, some ochre. Okay. And I can go for olive green. Okay. Again, my paint could be reasonably runny first. And this is going to be some of my lighter colors. Okay. I can see some extra light, a bit more further away from us. So I'm going to apply quick strokes. I'm seeing some lovely orange underneath my strokes. Again, I will introduce a little bit more thicker paint as well, but let's start with that runnier one first. Then I'm going to start to increase my green, so I can go for olive green, or I could have gone for emerald green. And most importantly, I'm going to start adding a small amount of white, so it will become more opaque. With extra white, of course, the color will become as well paler, but it will be more opaque. The quality of it will be seen, will be viewed differently as well. So let me put a stroke here. Maybe a tiny bit of a hint of emerald green. Okay, that's quite strong. Let's mix it back with all the yellows. Okay, that's good. Maybe some more paler tones of green here. Okay, I want to put a tiny bit of water, which I will paint over my greens as a little streak of light for the loch. Okay. And I'm starting to increase the darkness of the green by bringing fresh emerald green, more of it. And I can also tone it down, that vibrancy of it, of that super green, with cadmium red. Okay, this is quite a dark tone. I can make it lighter with a bit of white, but I'm going to just test it out here first. I think that will work. Perhaps for my shadow here, again, I'm pressing on my brush, bristles going quite wide, so I'm getting that juicy paint, that oil out on the surface of the painting. Can bring some of that paler, runnier, olive green and ochre as well. And then I can add a bit more white, or both titanium, or both. Both titanium and white will make the paint more dull, so you have to come back to ochre to make that more of a sunnier look. We can also use cobalt blue or cerulean blue to soften our green, so it doesn't have that strong emerald look. So just painting a bit more close to my stones here. I want to establish a little bit more calmness before I add more shadows. A bit more calmer, flatter surface where the stones rest. Okay, I'm smudging into those shadows we painted for them. And I think this one, if I paint it a little further, that darker color, it's not going to look like it's floating in the air in that lit up valley. Okay, that's better. Okay, so we've got a bit more sunshine in that part of the valley, a bit more duller light. Yeah, and I think I might just put a tiny bit more light here, some extra more sun, but maybe not as light, less yellow, more ochre. Okay. Maybe little bits of orange left if possible, or that a little bit of that transparent. Quite like a couple of gaps here of the orange. I don't know if you see it in the camera. I've got one here, one here, one there, one there, one there. They just kind of gives that feel for the space a bit more. Okay, just filling some of the gaps I have not painted. Now the strokes of slightly dark green here happen spontaneously. I didn't quite aim for them, but it shows slightly more dense surface of the greens. It shows kind of possible other rocks or stones underneath, which kind of have the grass goes around it all. So that's quite exciting. Quite like that. Right, and I might use something similar green, tiny bit more here for the mountain before I finish it off with some more purples. Right, that's good. My trees. Now I need to bring that pale yellowish green a little bit below, next to tree trunks of those groups of trees first. I'm just dragging the color from the painting and ready to bring some darker strokes. Again, I'm going to go for cobalt blue with any of my palette green. Okay, that's really quite nice. Maybe a tiny dab of violet as well to that. Tiny bit of oil is getting quite dry. And the plan is just to, like we've done with the clouds, just to apply a little wiggly stroke where the paint merges with the rainier strokes of that yellowish green, of that darker green. Okay, I painted a bit more trees than I initially thought, but that's quite nice. If we wanted to put some tree trunks, yeah, or maybe I'm just putting a tiny bit of lines, just some vertical dabs of lines, and I'm gonna create a little maybe shadow or lost and found line for a wall or stone wall, perhaps, of more modern farmers' environment. My village, I don't think I've got much space for it or the texture enough, kind of the volume. I think I might just lose it if I start bringing some extra strokes of white and light here and there. Maximum I'll use a bit of buff titanium and put a couple of shapes which might remind us of maybe groups of houses, maybe a church, maybe there's enough. And I can do something similar with my mountain just to finish it off, just using a bit of buff titanium and some violet. Okay, and I just mix this color with existing paler greens we already have here. Okay, it looks like I've got more rain on that mountain, so if I want to have a little bit more definition, I'll bring a stronger violet here. And then part of it could remain in that smudge of the greens, which is really exciting as well. Okay, good. Right, and if I wanted some water, which I do because the burial often faces the water, as we said, I'm going to use some of my bluish, so grayish blue, maybe with a tiny bit of white in it. It's quite a lot of thick paint or paint in that area where we want to do the water. If you're happy with your painting without having any water, the water might be the other side, which is more open part of the loch. It's more towards the right from us, so that's will be fine. I'm just gonna bring tiny bit more of that here. Okay, actually stronger blue might be better. It does appear quite white. Okay, maybe a bit more opening. If it's not blue enough or not gray enough, I'll add a small amount of ultramarine. Okay, just seeing how that color behaves. Quite a lot of green paint in the area, so I prefer to have it grayish rather than greenish. Okay, a bit more calmer, that's it. And then again, I will bring I've painted a little bit over the edge of my rock, so now I can paint the rock back. Okay, tiny bit more tweak. That's more of a flat surface. And can I follow that light, perhaps for water somewhere here? Okay. Maybe a tiny bit more highlights on that water, and I think I'm more or less done. Seeing how it stands out. And that horizontal line is a bit better. But I keep getting all my colors shining on it. Okay, so let's try this shape again. Okay, good, but just a bit too similar. I don't want two lines, I want the shape of water. Okay, that's a bit better. That's almost like one bay, another bay. And that becomes more of a darker tree in between. Okay, that's okay. That's suggestive enough to show some sort of water around. Right, anything else as I'm looking at the picture stepping away from it? Can I do anything else? Maybe a little dab of extra darker green, maybe my green with a bit of violet. Just thinking of doing something less perfect at the front. Maybe another shadow, maybe another less perfect border of light. This is more exciting. Maybe there's a cloud shadow. Yeah, slightly less perfection in that surface there. Okay, that stroke is a little too similar in volume. Okay. And same thing maybe as a big, just a little lighter stroke for the stones. If I'm still keeping the brush I used for the stone. I'm getting a tiny bit more white and whatever's left of buff titanium. Perhaps for a small streak of light on the border of the shadow. That's tiny bit of it, but a slight accent of light is that didn't quite happen there. Okay, that's a bit too much. Okay, that's better. And perhaps somewhere here. Again, that's just emphasizing just that small extra light. Okay, that's something coming there, that's better. And again, something perhaps a bit more bolder as mini adjustment. To the shape. I'm much happier with that now. And now I can put my brush down and stop. Okay, that's border. Okay, that's better as well. So thank you very much for painting